If you keep your clients moving in a forward direction with that momentum, constantly telling them you're going to do A and doing A and A plus each and every time, you're going to win trust. You're going to win a lot of great points, if you will, with them. Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hey, outdoor living professionals. How often are you taking measurements right after your discovery meeting with your clients? I mean, just get done talking about all the amazing things you're going to do in their backyard. You shake some hands, you grab a check, and out you go to take your measurements. How often are you doing that? I'm here to tell you, stop. Stop taking measurements right after your discovery meeting, and here's why. When you go out and you're meeting with clients, and you're hopefully going to spend a half hour with them at the discovery meeting to make sure that you truly understand what they need, want, and desire. You understand their property. You understand their concerns. You understand all of that, the topography, everything. And you're sitting down and you're working with them and you're talking design and you're talking in design language and you're talking about the project and what's possible and all that stuff. You are in your creative side of your brain. That's the side where everything is possible and everything makes sense and you can build this project for them. You already kind of see it already, right? Then you flip hats after you collect your check or however your sales process works and you get started on collecting those measurements. You have to now flip hats, or in this case, flip sides of brain and go into the analytical side and make sure that you're seeing the project exactly the way a designer needs to see it. So you go from the creative side of your brain to the analytical side of your brain. And in that shift, in that transfer, a lot of information can be lost. I know this because I used to do this. I used to think it was the most efficient way to have my discovery meeting with my clients, walk around, look at the place, and immediately take measurements and draft everything up right after that meeting. And I was thinking, I'm really saving time. I don't have to drive out there twice. But here's the problem. Historically, I was finding that I was missing measurements, or worse yet, in a hurry, because maybe that meeting was at 3:00 in the afternoon. And by the time I finished that meeting, it was 4:00. And by 4:00, and I've got a half-hour ride home or an hour ride home, I'm thinking, man, I'd like to be home for dinner. I'm like, how fast can I get these measurements? Or the rain clouds are coming in, and I start to race through the measurements and saying, I don't need that measurement, or that's pretty close, and start getting pushed because I had to go from creative to analytical side. Plus, I felt pressure. Or I have multiple meetings that day. And one, I've had them booked out for maybe 3 or 4 hours total for each meeting, including measurements. And I find myself racing through the measurement side of things in order to get to the next meeting on time. You guys feel me? Has this ever happened to you? That would happen all the time to me. And I would feel like, you know what? I wish I just had more time for these measurements. And the problem was, see, when you do all those measurements right after the meeting, and then you go back and you have you or your designer doing the design, the mistakes or the parts of those measurements that weren't collected, they come up and bite you during construction, because everything between that design and bidding and everything looks fine until you actually take those plans that have those false measurements or potentially wiggly measurements out to site and start to work it out. Next thing, like, oh man, I kind of guessed on that measurement, or I thought that tree was more over here and I took a guess on where that was because I didn't have time to measure it. So that's why I'm saying stop taking measurements after your discovery meeting. Here's the way that I found is the very best way to do this in order to get the most efficient use of that time and the most effective measurements afterward. Because guys, we make money based on those measurements. If that 4 becomes a 9, or you miss a measurement and you guess, and that ends up in adding, 2 or 3 triaxles of stone or topsoil, that could be the difference between a highly profitable project and just a possibly profitable project, or even worse, a project that costs you money to build. So what I'm trying to say here is, when you slow that process down and you're purposeful with it, you go out there for that discovery meeting, you have a great meeting with the client, or maybe you have 2 or 3 stacked. You have just those discovery meetings, no measurements. And then you back up and you plan another day where you go out for those 1, 2, or 3 projects. And all you're going at is with your analytical brain, ready to break those projects down into measurements so you can bring them into a design software. trust me, this will make a much more effective way. This is a much more effective way to get a great discovery meeting, the end of your sales cycle for the front line, right? For the front side. And then the beginning of the design cycle, that transition, it is very important to make sure A, you've done a great job and you're not rushed in your discovery meeting. And B, that you can get accurate measurements for you or your design team to make sure that those designs come out possibly able to be profitable, if that makes sense. If we race through the measurements or try to just guesstimate on certain things, that's going to haunt you. I know it haunted me. I've lost lots of money just trying to speed through that process. So I broke it up into 2 different meetings. Now I know some of you guys are thinking, well, that's very inefficient, Josh. We always talk about, zero drive time. You always talk about how to minimize how much time you're on the road because you can't make money when you're driving. And I totally get that. This is one of those things, because of the different facet of brain that you're actually using, which side you're using, that it does make actual sense to do it this way. Now, in your busier season, maybe you can stack a couple of discovery meetings and then a couple of those measurements after, maybe a couple of days after, even if it's only a day after. Plan the time in your schedule and say, look, between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., I have 2 projects or 3 projects to measure, and just go do that only. And as you get there and you work on your big tablet and you're taking all these measurements down, you can do it with full focus, not thinking I got another meeting to get to, I've got this other thing I have to do, and then you're racing through those measurements. Because money is made or lost, your profitability completely pivots on if your measurements are right. If they're way off, it's going to cost you money. If they're spot on, you have a higher probability of making money on each and every project. Now you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with sales? Well, at the end of the day, our goal is to set expectations and deliver on or above. It's a basic fundamental sales principle. If you keep your clients moving in a forward direction with that momentum, constantly telling them you're going to do A and doing A and A plus each and every time, you're going to win trust. You're going to win a lot of great points, if you will, with them. And the measurements are important, because what happens if you're losing money on the project because that 4 was a 9, or you missed a measurement, or you guesstimated on something because you were in a hurry, inside you want to go back and say, look, I got to get a change order for this. I've got to get in there and make sure that I can start making money. I can't keep losing money on this project. And here's the problem. When you bring that to your client because it was your mistake and ask for more money, guess what they think? That's right. They think, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This girl has no clue what's going on. Do I really trust the rest of this project for them? Do they really have the skill set? If they can't take measurements right, do they have the skill set to build this thing? And you start setting those expectations, start to drip down and drop off. And those little deposits of trust you keep putting in your bucket and building by setting expectations and delivering on them, it's like somebody just pulls a plug out of the bottom of that bucket and the trust level goes down and they start questioning everything you're doing. And the reason why that happens is because we were in a hurry to get the measurements, and now we're in a position that we're losing money in the project because we needed 3 more triaxles of stone or topsoil or whatever it might be, or 5 more steps because we just did a quick measurement or a kind of an eyeball guess on how much the difference is between the first floor level and where that patio might be. And next thing you know, we're trying to go back to their clients for money, and they hate that. Clients don't like to be surprised. What they want from us is certainty. They want us to come out and give them a proposal that's going to take them from A to Z with no disruptions in the middle. And I know each and every project is very different. We don't ever do the same project twice, right? So how can we possibly systemize this? Well, you do it by taking your time in the measurement side. The more accurate your measurements are, the more accurate your design is, and the less chance you're going to have those mistakes flare up later during build. So take this for what it's worth. Something I've learned over the last 30 years is to break those 2 up whenever possible, and you will have a much more effective discovery meeting and also a much more effective measurement collection time, so that you're more accurate and you're not being rushed or pushed to get these things done. So guys, if you need help with your sales process, if you need help with exactly your step-by-step way that you bring clients from, hi, how you doing, to yes, take my check, that's what we do here at Yes Express. So you can simply reach out, click the link below, and book a call with me. I'd love to talk to you about what you're doing and how we can streamline that to make you guys absolutely dangerous out there when you're working with customers. So guys, till next week, see you then.